To start a new application from the Recover California Housing Programs application portal, you'll select the blue Start Application button under Action. It'll ask you to enter your first name and last name using the following format. From here, it'll take you to the Recover California Housing Programs Rehabilitation, Reconstruction, and Mitigation application. It's also going to generate a unique case ID right below. This will be your case ID throughout the application process. From here, you will click to continue, and it will take you through the various application steps from program overview all the way through submit. Appeal and award will be locked at this time, as this is just the general application. You can view users and add any additional user by selecting the add user. This is great if you want to have multiple household members have access, such as a co-owner, or if you may have a communication designee assisting you with the application, you can add them here by clicking add user. It'll ask for the additional household member's email address or the communication designee's email address. So we'll start at the very top, which is program overview. The program overview will provide applicants with information on the program, who can apply for the assistance, what they can expect from the programs, the different projects between rehabilitation and reconstruction, as well as the mitigation retrofit project. It'll also provide useful links for more information. We do encourage all applicants to review the program resources on the Recover California program website, including the policies and procedures for the disaster year that they are applying to. Once the applicant has reviewed the program overview, they will click Complete and Continue and move to Application Page A, Preliminary Eligibility. There are 5 questions on this page. The applicant will select all 5 questions. So the first is, how did you hear about the Recover California housing programs? And it'll include a drop-down list. The next is if the property that you're applying for was located within one of the most impacted and distressed counties. These counties are eligible for assistance under the program. If you select my property is not located in a listed county, you will get a stop sign indicating you are not eligible for the program at this time. The next question is, at the time of the disaster, did you own the applicable property and occupy it as your primary residence, or did you rent it out? These fields are conditional. So by selecting yes, it pops up with an additional question here. Was the applicable property a single family residence, including a mobile home or manufactured housing unit? Selecting different answers will provide different responses. So if you select no here, it'll indicate a stop sign here that you're not eligible because the property was not a single family residence. This would refer to eligible structure types located in our policies and procedures. Lastly, what year are you applying for? You'll select the disaster year, and then you'll select the type of project you're applying for. There is a list of 6 eligible projects: reconstruction, rehabilitation, as well as our mitigation retrofits programs. It's important to remember that the application that you're completing here in Neighborly is the same application no matter which project type you're applying for. Once this has been completed, the applicant will select Complete and Continue. From here, this will take the applicant to step B, Contact Information. This is where the applicant will enter their contact information. It is important to note that this first section is for the primary applicant. So this needs to be somebody who's listed on the grant deed or property tax records, someone who has ownership of the property. This will be the primary applicant. The applicant will also have the ability to enter their preferred method of communication, as well as their preferred language. Applicants are able to add a power of attorney. This is again, once again, a conditional field. So if the applicant selects yes, it'll ask for the contact information for the power of attorney. If the applicant has a communication designee, somebody that they want to designate as a third party to receive information about their program status, they can select yes or no here. Once again, selecting yes would be a conditional field, and then the applicant would be able to provide contact information for their communication designee. A communication designee form is required. By selecting yes, it will automatically populate this form to be able to be downloaded, print, and sign. All forms for the program must be signed physically in blue ink. That is one thing that applicants should be made aware of, that any form sent back that requires a signature should be signed in blue ink. Step B, contact information, also allows applicants to provide co-owner information. If there is a co-owner, it will provide additional fields for the applicant to list the first and last name, as well as contact information for the co-owner. It is important that every co-owner be listed on the application. So if there are multiple owners on a deed, they would all need to be listed on the application. This is the same in the instance of a trust. If the applicant has a property that is that the trust is on the ownership documentation, the trust must be listed as a co-owner and an applicant on the application. There is also other owners. So B11 asks if there are other owners who are not in the application. This is for non-resident co-owners. So if there's an owner on the grant deed who does not reside in the property, they will need to be added as another owner on the application. The applicant, once completed, will click complete and continue to move to the next application page. Now you'll see here, because required fields were not entered, the applicant cannot move forward in the process. So these all must be filled out. This is a requirement for the program. So I'll quickly fill these out here in a test environment. And now we can move on. Application page C is for the applicant to list all household members. It is important that the applicant note that this is for as of today. So this is the time they are submitting the application. All household members who reside or who will be residing in the property should be added to the application. You'll click to add a new household member. The first will always be the primary household member, and this will be duplicative of what was entered in step A, preliminary eligibility. So the primary applicant must enter themselves as the primary household member. The applicant will enter their name, middle name, if applicable. This is not a required field, and their last name, birth date. And then there's some demographics here that they'll complete as well too. There is an option for decline to answer. And then the relationship. So applicants who are entering themselves as the primary household will select self, and then there's a drop-down list for additional. And this is important that the applicant enters every household member Once all household members are added, complete and continue and move to step D, income. Step D, income, starts with a conditional question. Is the applicable property a home that you own and will rent out when reconstructed? And then select no if you are a landlord applying for mitigation retrofits program. So if it is a property that they own and rent out, we'll select yes. There's additional questions. If no, it will take them to primary applicant name. So once again, this will be the primary applicant who's entered first on this page. Relation, and then income verification source. So we understand there are a variety of income sources. So there's a drop-down list here. If the applicant receives multiple income sources, they will select the multiple income source from the drop-down list. If an applicant had filed their previous year's tax return, they can select the 1040 tax return. If they receive employment income through pay stubs, there's an option for wages, all sorts of income source options here. Select what is the best fit for the applicant. The amount per year, this is going to be any information they have, if they've annualized their income, if they have tax records to verify their annual household income, or the best estimate of what the annual income will be. D1E will ask if the income will stay the same for the next 12 months. If an applicant is on a fixed income, say they only receive Social Security income or a pension, or if there will be no changes to their employment income, they can select yes. If there will be changes, the applicant will need to indicate that it will not stay the same. Step D also has a section for the applicant to upload their primary income source documentation. The program is going to always require the previous year's filed tax return if available. We do know applicants aren't always required to file taxes, whether they are not required to, they've requested an extension, or they just haven't filed currently at this time. So then they can provide other income source documentation. If an applicant has any questions or doesn't have the documentation readily available, this is not a required field to submit the application. A case manager will be assigned to the applicant to request and collect income documentation at a later date during the application intake review once the application has been submitted. We always do want to encourage applicants to submit as much documentation on the front end as they can, but we also don't want to make a barrier for them to submit the application. This can be collected after the application has been submitted. D2 will ask if there's a second household member. So it's important to note any household member listed in step C should be accounted for in step D, income, even if they don't have income. So if their income source is zero income, that's okay. They're still going to be accounted for here on step D. So we'll review that scenario. An adult child here, income source. So if they don't have any income, they'll select zero income. This will then conditionally add the field, please download, complete, and upload the zero income certification form. So this would be the income source documentation for zero income. The applicant will enter their case ID, damaged property address, the household member name, relation to the head of household, date of birth, indicate that they are either the primary applicant or not the primary applicant, if they're a co-owner, and they'll check this box to indicate that they are certifying zero income and provide a brief narrative of how they plan to pay for their living expenses. And then they will read the acknowledgement here, sign, and date the document. Once again, these documents need to be signed in blue ink. This document can be uploaded to the application for the income source documentation. This will be completed for all household members. Once income is complete, the applicant will move on to move on to step E, property. This is where the applicant will provide basic property information. So the property type, whether it's a single family home, a mobile home, or a manufactured home. The property address for the property that will be rehabilitated, reconstructed, or mitigated. The applicant will select the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and list the conditioned square footage. This question comes up sometimes. Conditioned square footage is going to be approved square footage from the home. It's going to exclude any garages, any covered awnings, any unpermitted additions to the home. So what is going to be considered conditioned square footage here is going to be what is on file with the building permit within the county. This can be the best guess the applicant has if they don't have the exact amount. The program will verify through third-party sources, property type, and square footage, and the year the home was built. Question E7 is going to list if the applicable property is subject to a homeowners association or any other special restrictions. E8, do you currently occupy a home that is not the residence you're trying to get assistance for? If they select yes, it'll have a conditional field. Do they own or rent the property? If they own, it's going to ask for the purchase date of this additional home. If they rent, it will continue on to E9. If the applicable property is their primary residence. Have you or a tenant been displaced from the applicable property due to damage caused by a disaster? Yes or no? If yes, they're going to explain their current living situation. We know a lot of applicants are renting, have moved in with family members, might be still residing on the damaged property in RV or a fifth wheel. So the applicant will just provide a brief explanation here of their current living situation. The applicant will fill out the remaining questions regarding the property. E14 is going to also highlight if there's any other owners on the deed. So this information should be captured in step B, contact information for other co-owners or co-applicants. So the applicant will list those names here as well too. So this will be a space to provide the names of all owners on the deed, and then also any entities such as a trust. E15 will ask if there's any leases, liens, or rental agreements, or easements, or deed restrictions affecting the property, yes or no. If yes, a conditional field to explain that situation will be generated. And then if the applicable property has a mortgage, this is another conditional field. If yes, the applicant can upload an active mortgage statement. We do require a current mortgage statement. This will also meet some of our eligibility documentation requirements, such as proof of current ownership. So this documentation will be very useful for the eligibility team. They have the ability to upload the file here. Once again, this is not a required field to upload the document at the time of application submission. We can collect that on the back end, but if the applicant has access to it and we can upload it at the time of submission, it'll definitely speed up the intake review process. Step F will be FEMA and Small Business Administration assistance. The applicant will enter if they received any disaster-related assistance from FEMA or from the SBA. So these are conditional fields. If they select yes, it'll ask for the amount that was approved, the amount that the applicant has received to date, and the FEMA registration number. It'll also allow the applicant to provide their FEMA award or denial letter. This will be super helpful for our eligibility team as well as our intake team. And a FEMA letter can meet several eligibility requirements. So if an applicant has that available on hand, it'd be great to upload to the application. If the applicant needs assistance getting a FEMA award letter, we can also assist with that through a case manager. They'll need to log onto their account and they can download it from FEMA. Conditional fields here as well too. If an applicant received a Small Business Administration loan, how much was approved, how much was received to date, application number, loan number, and then the status of their loan. So if they did receive a loan, are they making their payments, paying as agreed upon? They didn't accept the award, they're not using the loan amount. So these are all great things that the eligibility and intake team will be collecting. Step G, insurance and other assistance. This will ask the applicant if they've received any insurance from their homeowner's policy at the time of the disaster, and also if they've received any other disaster-related funding for rehabilitation, reconstruction, or mitigation to their home. Once again, conditional fields here. So if an applicant selects yes, we'll ask for the name of their insurance policy provider. They can also upload a copy of their homeowner's insurance. It's important to note here that the program is going to be looking for the policy from the period of the time of the disaster. So typically, we're going to be looking for a declarations page. If an applicant doesn't have this on hand, they can most likely contact their insurance provider and request a copy from the policy during the disaster year. And then also, if an applicant filed a claim with their homeowner's insurance policy, they'll indicate that here. If yes, how much they received from that claim. And then there's also a question if they are involved or in an appeal or a lawsuit with their insurance company. If an applicant did file a claim, one of the eligibility requirements for our program is proof of damage. Typically, if a claim was filed and an applicant did receive money from their insurance company, they'll have a proof of loss statement. This is another great thing an applicant can request from their insurance provider if they don't already have it on hand. The proof of loss documentation will verify damage, and it'll also help our duplication of benefits team review the amount of assistance they received for the purpose of reconstruction, rehabilitation, or mitigation. G2, as I mentioned, will be other disaster-related assistance. So this will be things like Cal Home, any type of nonprofit assistance. And it's important that that this information is for the purpose of rehabilitation, repair, or mitigation. So if an applicant received funding from a nonprofit organization to replace personal property, clothes, for example, that's not going to be a duplication of benefits for this program because we're looking at funding that was given for the explicit purpose of rehabilitation, reconstruction, or mitigation. It's a conditional field as well here. So if they do select yes, what was the source of assistance and how much of assistance received? And then we're going to look for evidence of that assistance received. This is something the duplication benefits team is going to want to review to see if it's duplicative assistance. So great documentation would be award letters, approval letters, if they have a copy of a check if they received money for this assistance, receipts, invoices, those types of things will be great here. If that's not available, we can look at maybe, emails, confirmations of the amount that was given, those types of documentation. Step H is exclusions. So the applicant will answer the following question. If they spent money on any of the following as a result of the disaster, there is a list here for debris removal, repairs, theft or vandalism to the property, or the reconstruction of the property, legal fees, if they purchased a vehicle. Some applicants we see, use money to purchase a van or possibly a fifth wheel after the disaster to use as housing, temporary housing costs, so rent, forced mortgage payoff if they did have to pay their mortgage off with insurance proceeds, and then contractor fraud. So the applicant will select any of these that are applicable to their situation, and then also describe the paid expenses. And then H3 is going to have them upload the evidence of these paid receipts. So it's really important that applicants provide documentation for this. Uh, Receipts are always great. Invoices that maybe show paid on them with a timestamp. If it's a vehicle, we could look at, the pink slip, bill of sale, those types of documents. For temporary housing cost, a rental agreement is not going to be sufficient. We're going to need to see, transactions. So if they paid rent via check, if it was electronic payment, something that kind of shows those transaction history and payments. Once this step is completed, the applicant will move to step I, disability. This will allow the applicant to report any disabilities that would require specific design features in the home. So if we are doing repairs or reconstruction on the property, it'll allow the applicant to kind of notify us on the front end. And this is important because once an applicant has made a home selection, changes after the fact, aren't permitted. So we want to have this information on the front end. So when they are meeting with the construction and management team, this information's shared already, and we can have discussions around any additional type of design features that they may need. So there's a list here. If the applicant selects other, they can type and specify other accommodations they may need. But a lot of these are the standard ones. So a home without, carpet flooring, if they need any type of grab bars in the shower, those types of things. And then I2 is if they require reasonable accommodation for a disability when communicating with the program. So if they select yes, they can list what type of reasonable accommodations they're requesting. Application page J is going to be our first of 3 program forms that are required to be reviewed and signed by the applicant. So the first is the rights of entry and authorization agreement. We do encourage the applicant to read through the entire agreement before selecting and acknowledging. Once they've read through and they've agreed to all the check marks, they'll sign the document by clicking here to electronically sign. If an applicant has any questions on a form, they are able to contact the program to have any of those questions answered. The right of entry form here is designed to let the applicant know that there will be some activities on the property, construction and inspection related. And so the applicant is authorizing the program to have those inspections take place on the property. In addition, the site ready, no interference and removal of obstructions. This is for when construction has begun on the property. And so we do encourage the applicant to read through and make sure they fully understand these forms. Once they've signed, they'll complete and continue and move to the next program form, which is the fraud acknowledgement. This one is pretty straightforward. Basically, the homeowner and applicant is going to indicate that they're providing true and accurate statements to the program. They're not intentionally or knowingly making false or misleading statements. They're basically standing by and, that they're representing that their statements about other assistance they've received, such as FEMA, SBA, those other nonprofit type of assistance that are true and correct. And then they're also going to acknowledge that Title 18 of the United States Code Section 1001 makes it a violation of federal law to willingly falsify, conceal, or cover up or make any materially false statements when they are engaged in this type of program that is funded by the federal government and is being distributed through the state level. And then additionally, they're going to be making sure that they're that in any proceeding to enforce the obligations arising from funds received, that the Department of Housing and Community Development can be entitled to recover all costs including attorney fees if they do provide fraudulent information to the program. So all of these statements will need to be selected, and the applicant will provide their participant signature. Now, we do want the applicant to provide their written name as they entered it on the application, first and last. Step L is going to be the personal information release authorization. So the applicant is providing consent and authorization for the program to release personal information. There's a long list here that they will read through and acknowledge. The program uses this for a few different things. One, in the intake and kind of eligibility portion, this allows the program to obtain documentation on behalf of the applicant in certain situations. One example that's commonly used is to obtain property tax records to prove ownership and potentially occupancy through a homeowner's exemption. This form allows the program to contact the county tax office and obtain that property tax record on the behalf of the applicant. And so we do encourage the applicant to read through, and once they're done, they'll sign electronically as well too, enter their first and last name and sign. This takes the applicant to step M, required documents. Now, it's important to note here, it's bolded on the application, but if you do not upload the documents requested in all sections of the application, a case manager will contact you to secure alternative methods to receive the documents. This will result in a longer review process. So this is important to note because we don't want this to be a barrier for applicants to submit an application if they don't have the documentation on hand. A case manager will assist them to collect the documentation, provide them with kind of a list of what may be acceptable. If we can obtain some documentation on their behalf, such as property tax records, we will do that. But we do encourage, and we would like the applicant to provide as much documentation as possible on the front end to make that review go quicker. There are two program forms, the Housing Counseling Acknowledgement and the Grant Certifications, that the applicant can download directly from the application up here. It's also hyperlinked in the section here. So by clicking on this, the applicant can download the form and then sign and upload. Once again, this is a physical signature, so we do require this to be in blue ink. The applicant will enter their account ID. This is the unique case ID that is provided when the applicant creates their application. The homeowner name, any co-owner names if applicable, the property address for the home they're applying for, city, state, and zip, and the county. And there are initial sections here throughout the document. And the last page will also have a place for a signature. If there are multiple co-owners, all co-owners can sign here. Additionally, just to the side, once again, it needs to be in blue ink. And the Housing Counseling Acknowledgement is available to download as well too, for the applicant to complete and sign. If an applicant doesn't have access to a printer and can't get these physical signatures and has an email address, what we will do once it's been submitted, a case manager can have the forms sent to the applicant electronically for electronic signature. We can only accept electronic signature if it's coming from the program through Adobe Sign, which is what we will send it through. An applicant can't electronically sign a document and upload it on their own. The additional list of documentation here would be valid government issued photo IDs for all household members over the age of 18. That is a requirement. A driver's license is the most common document we do receive, but we can also accept a passport. We can accept an alien registration card or any other type of government ID. The applicant will also upload proof of citizenship. This is kind of meets our federal benefits eligibility requirement. So a birth certificate, a passport. If an applicant did receive FEMA funding, they can also upload a FEMA individual assistance award letter. Naturalization papers, alien registration card would also work. Proof of current property tax. So we do have a property tax eligibility requirement that property tax are current, or the applicant is on a payment plan through their county. So we do need proof of that. This is something an applicant can request from their county tax office if they don't already have a copy on hand. The program can also obtain this on behalf of the applicant if we do have that consent and release form signed. The next is proof of primary residence. So this is current or proof of residency at the time of the disaster, as that is also a requirement. So if the property tax from the disaster year shows a homeowner exemption, we can use that. A word letter from FEMA or the SBA, the filed tax return from the disaster year. If it shows the address the applicant is applying for, it listed on the tax return. Voter registration card dated prior to the fire. We can accept a few additional documents. So if the applicant doesn't have one here on this list, a case manager can kind of assist with additional proof of primary residence documentation. Proof of ownership. This will be something like a deed, title report. We can also use an award letter from FEMA, the property tax bill. So this is something, if the applicant doesn't have readily available, we can also obtain that tax bill for them, but a deed is going to be a great option. It also helped the program see if there's any additional co-owners that may be missing from the application. It'll show if the applicant's in a trust. So a deed would be great here. One thing to note as well, too, mentioning trusts, if an application does have ownership in a trust, we will require the trust agreement to be provided. And lastly is the income certification form. This form currently isn't available to download from the application. This is something that will be sent to the applicant after they submit the application. Once we've verified all income source documentation, the income certification form is signed by the applicant, co-applicant, and any household member over the age of 18. Step M, required documents here, does not require you to upload any documentation if the applicant doesn't have it at the time of submission. So this is something we can hit complete and continue. But once again, please upload any documentation your applicant may have. And then the last page here is going to be to submit the application. Once an application is submitted, it can only be reopened by an administrator. So this means once it's been assigned to a case manager, we can reopen pages for edits to be made, but nothing can be edited until it's been assigned to case manager. The applicant will indicate here that they understand the information is going to be used to determine their eligibility, that their statements are true and complete to the best of their knowledge. They understand that providing false representations constitutes as an act of fraud, and that they understand if they have already begun rehabilitation, reconstruction, or mitigation work before submitting this application, they are required to stop work once they submit the application. And that if they don't understand, if they do not comply with the requirement to stop work, they will be deemed ineligible for program assistance. This is part of a stop work order, which is listed in the program policy and procedures that we do encourage all applicants to read prior to submitting. And then the last question here is, are you a landlord applicant? Yes or no? And then click here to sign electronically. So once again, this applicant will enter their first and last name, hit sign. From here, they'll hit the blue submit application. Now, if an applicant starts an application and is unable to finish it in the time they sit down to do it, every application page does have the option to save. This will save the history, and when the applicant logs back in to restart the application, the information that they've already completed will be saved. Hitting submit application. We'll take the applicant back, and you'll see there'll be a check mark here next to every application page that's been completed. They can revisit the application portal to check the status of the application. It would also be great for the applicant to write down the phone number here listed. This will take them to the applicant line for the Recover California program. The applicant will also receive an email once an application has been submitted, indicating that the application has been submitted. And I will briefly pull it up just so you can see what that email will look like. So the applicant will receive an email that comes from Neighborly Software saying new application submitted. And then it's going to indicate the name, the case ID, and then it'll also give the applicant a link to visit their application. And that is the Recover California Housing Programs application for our rehabilitation, reconstruction, or mitigation programs.